brain. It has elevations and grooves, as you can see right here. This is an elevation. This is a groove. The elevations are called gyras, and the grooves are called sulcus. There is a very long groove, which is this one. This is called the longitudinal fissure, and the longitudinal fissure is going to divide your brain in two hemispheres. This is going to be the right hemisphere, and this other side is going to be the left hemisphere. Not only that, but the brain can also be divided in lobes. So if this is where your face is, this is going to be the frontal lobe. This is going to be the parietal lobe. This is going to be the occipital lobe around here. And down here is going to be the temporal lobe. So the central sulcus separates your frontal lobe from your parietal lobe, as you can see right here, parietal lobe and frontal lobe. Okay, in addition to that, this figure is showing us other structures that you have. Cerebellum, which is this one right here, and your brainstem down here. And we're going to find this figure where we're cutting the brain in the middle through the longitudinal fissure, and we can see the inside part of the brain. In this case, again, we said this is cerebral cortex. This is the cerebellum. We mentioned that this is going to be the brainstem. We have gray and white matter, and that's what we have in our cerebral cortex. Gray matter is provided by the body of the neurons, and white matter is the axon. Embryonic development, cerebrum, midbrain, pons, cerebellum, medulla oblongata. The next topic is meninges, ventricles, cerebrospinal fluid, and blood supply. All of them, one way or another, they're going to provide protection to your brain, the same way as they do it with the spinal cord. The meninges, they're going to be the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. Pia mater is the one that is the closest to the brain, arachnoid mater is in the middle, and the dura mater is the one that is closest to the skull. And they all are going to cover the brain, not only the brain, but also the spinal cord. The ventricles and the cerebrospinal fluid. In our brain, we have cavities, and these cavities are going to be called ventricles. These ventricles are occupied by this blue fluid that we have in here. This blue fluid is the cerebrospinal fluid. It's called cerebrospinal fluid because it's not only in your brain, but also goes down towards your spinal cord. We have different spaces. We have 1, 2, they are called lateral ventricles. This is going to be the third one. Therefore, this is called the third ventricle. And down here, you're going to have another one, and this is going to be called the fourth ventricle. Okay, the communication between the third and fourth ventricle is provided by the cerebral aqueduct. And very important to notice is at the level of the fourth ventricle, you have the lateral apertures. The lateral apertures will allow the fluid to come out and bathe the brain. The median aperture continues down through the central canal in order to take the fluid to the spinal cord. What happens with the cerebrospinal fluid? The cerebrospinal fluid is formed in the choroid plexus. Inside the choroid plexus, you're going to find the ependymal cells that are going to start producing the cerebrospinal fluid. They produce approximately 500 milliliters, and 350 milliliters more or less of that fluid is reabsorbed. And we have 150 milliliters most of the time inside our brain and our spinal cord. So this fluid comes down right here, and as I said, through the lateral apertures, they will come out and bathe the brain. How it gets reabsorbed goes out, and through the arachnoid villus, the fluid gets reabsorbed into the superior sagittal sinus that eventually is going to dump all that fluid into the systemic circulation. So this fluid basically provides several functions, such as, for example, cushion, because if you get hit, your brain can move and can hit the inside of your skull. That doesn't happen because the cerebrospinal fluid is going to provide protection against that. Other functions, buoyancy. The cerebrospinal fluid allows the brain to be suspended in the fluid, because if you don't have this fluid, then the bottom of the brain will rest on your skull, and then the neurons at the bottom of your brain will get damaged because of the weight of the brain. So that doesn't happen because, again, the fluid provides buoyancy. Chemical stability. The brain has cells, and these cells are going to produce different chemicals, and these chemicals, they must be removed. For example, there's going to be hydrogen, and hydrogen changes pH, and obviously that's going to produce changes in pH, and that's a problem because the pH in your brain must be maintained. So the cerebrospinal fluid allows us to get rid of this waste, for example, that we get there. Blood supply and blood-brain barrier. The brain depends a lot on blood, right? If you don't get blood to your brain, you will pass out. This blood contains nutrients which are necessary, so it's important to provide nutrients to the brain, but also it may contain a lot of waste, bacteria, microorganisms that we don't want in our brain. So therefore, there's something called the blood-brain barrier. So the blood-brain barrier is provided by the walls of the blood vessel, as well as the extensions that we get from the astrocytes. And this allows only certain things to cross towards your brain, but some other things will not cross from your blood into your brain. This is important again because, for example, we don't want bacteria to go inside your brain. However, your brain must keep homeostasis of your body, therefore it must get information about the chemical composition, for example, of your blood and different areas in your body. So because of that, the blood-brain barrier, yes, it covers your brain, but there are some areas in which it doesn't have this blood-brain barrier, and those areas are the circumventricular organs. Unfortunately, these areas, because they are open, they allow certain microorganisms to get inside your brain this way, such as, for example, HIV. Also, a lot of times it's a good thing, but sometimes it's not so good, because if you need, for example, an antibiotic to get into your brain to treat an infection, the blood-brain barrier will stop this antibiotic from reaching your brain. Therefore, it's going to be very hard to treat the infection because of that reason. So it's a good thing, but in some circumstances, it is not. The brainstem. The brainstem has three parts: the medulla oblongata, pons, and midbrain. Regardless of the part of the brainstem that you're looking at, there are always cranial nerves. So the cranial nerves are in very close relationship to the brainstem. In order for you to understand the functions of the brainstem, learn the functions of all the cranial nerves, because that will tell you exactly what each one of them are going to do. The medulla oblongata, the nerves involved are 8, 9, 10, and 12. The pons, cranial nerves 5, 6, 7, and 8. And in the midbrain, you can see cranial nerves number 3 and number 4. So let's take a look at the cranial nerves. This is the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. And you can see in his line where you have the cranial nerves. We have a total of 12 cranial nerves. So the very first one is olfactory nerve. Olfactory nerve, obviously the function is a smell, and it's sensory, because the only thing that you're going to do with the olfactory nerve is just a smell. You don't move your nose with that. We use a different cranial nerve in order to do that. Cranial nerve number 2 is going to be the optic nerve. Optic nerve, what you achieve with that? Vision. What type of nerve it is sensory, because the only thing that you're going to do with it is just vision. You don't move your eyes with the optic nerve. Cranial nerve number 3 is called oculomotor. Oculo sounds like eye, motor sounds like movement, so therefore this one is going to help you with eye movements. So therefore this is mainly motor. So far you can see that there are some cranial nerves that are pure sensory, such as olfactory nerve, which is just for smelling, you don't move anything. And you have some other ones that are mainly motor, like the oculomotor, for example, that is going to help you move your eyes. But that's not the only nerve that is going to help you move your eyes, because you have another one, such as the trochlear, which is cranial nerve number 4, that is going to help you move the eyes as well. So it's also considered predominantly motor. The next one is going to be cranial nerve number 5, trigeminal. Tri sounds like 3, because this nerve has actually 3 branches. Division 1 is ophthalmic. Division 2 is going to be maxillary, and division 3 is going to be mandibular. So this nerve, trigeminal, is considered mixed. Why? Because you actually have pieces that are going to be sensory and pieces that are going to be motor. The next one is going to be cranial nerve number 6, which is abducens. This is also predominantly motor because it helps you move your eyes. Cranial nerve number 7 is facial. It's considered mixed because it helps you taste, but it also moves a lot of muscles that you have in your face. It has 5 branches. They're going to be temporal, zygomatic, buccal, mandibular, and cervical. Next one, vestibulocochlear. This one is in your ears. This one helps you with hearing and equilibrium, and it's mainly sensory. The next one is going to be glossopharyngeal. Glosso means tongue. So this one helps you move your tongue, helps you taste, also helps you with salivation and gagging. Next one, we got the vagus. Vagus is cranial nerve number 10. It gives you sensory, it gives you taste, and it also helps you with swallowing and speech. Cranial nerve number 10 not only works in the tongue and in the mouth, but it also goes down and helps you with the control of many organs that we have in our abdominal and thoracic area as part of the autonomic nervous system. And it helps you, for example, in the case of your heart, make your heart beat slower. So therefore it's a mixed nerve. Cranial nerve number 11 is accessory nerve. It helps you with movement of the neck. Some of the muscles in your neck are controlled by this nerve. Hypoglossal nerve is related to the tongue. He's going to help you with movements necessary for speech or swallowing or food manipulation, and is considered predominantly motor. So now you have learned that some nerves are sensory, some nerves are motor, and some nerves are mixed. The medulla oblongata, and we can see here again the nerves. Number 9 is glossopharyngeal. That's for the tongue. 10 also works with the tongue. And 12 is hypoglossal, also with the tongue functions. Chewing, salivation, swallowing, gagging, because everything got to do with all these cranial nerves. Also, don't forget that we have cardiovascular control as well as gastrointestinal control. Remember I told you cranial nerve number 10 is vagus, and that one goes all the way down to your abdomen and thorax in order to control the heart, control gastrointestinal movements. In the pons, we're going to have cranial nerves from number 5 to number 8. Number 8 is vestibulocochlear, so that one is for hearing, for equilibrium. Number 5 is trigeminal. That got to do with the sensations in your face. Number 6 is abducens, which is eye movement, taste, and facial movement. With number 7, midbrain, related to cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor. Cranial nerve number 4, trochlear. These two are very important for functions that relate to control of eye movement, blinking, focusing, pupillary dilation and constriction.